have Sherman. We are very glad and fortunate to have Sherman Kwok join us. He has had an illustrious career in digital forensics. I'll let him introduce himself. As a class, we will have questions for him, as well as if Sherman, you're okay, I'll share your LinkedIn with the class in case students want to reach out to you.
Yep.
Awesome. Cool.
Absolutely. All right, so morning, everybody. My name is Sherman Kwok, and I'm hoping you can see the slides. Like I was telling Carol, even after 4 years of doing the Zoom thing, I'm still not that great with it. It's pretty sad. So everybody good? You can see the slides?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, looks great.
Excellent. All right, so basically my background is that I am a recently retired FBI special agent. I just retired at the end of last year at 2023. And so I spent a good 20-something years with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies. I've also worked as a U.S. Marshal and also as a sheriff's deputy prior to that in a local capacity. And while I was at the FBI, I worked in a lot of different things, including foreign counterintelligence matters. And then the bulk of my career was spent doing digital forensics and cybersecurity. I was an examiner in our laboratory in Menlo Park for many years. And then I was also the lab director there for the last 4 years. I was in San Francisco. And then in the last 3 years, I was transferred out to headquarters here in Washington, D.C., where I am based now as a program manager for some of our cybersecurity programs out here. And it's been a great career with the FBI. They've assigned me to either working cases or training with our international partners to over 5 continents. So I've been obviously in North America here. I've been sent to Europe. I've been sent to Africa, to Asia, and Australia. The only one I was missing was South America. And I was so close to going there. I had actually signed on to an undercover assignment to South America, but then last minute it got canceled. So, oh well. Can't have everything. All right, so one thing I wanted to say is the disclaimer that I'm no longer with the FBI. So all of the views are on my own and not of the FBI. But the bulk of my presentation will be about the FBI because I am going to be talking about digital forensics in the law enforcement world. All right, so just from if you can chime in with the chat session there, how many folks are actually interested in working in the digital forensics world at some point in your future? Just go ahead and chime in. I'm just gonna try to get a gauge of people's interest. Curious but undecided. Okay, yeah, that's good. Well, that's why you're in this class, right? You want to get some exposure to it, and hopefully the other speakers, you know, that's been here will kind of help. So, oh, we have a former Fed at DOE. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Interesting. All right. Excellent. And so for the people who are interested, can you let me know whether you're interested in going into the law enforcement side of the world or the private sector? Because they're actually a little bit different in terms of what you do, how you do. You know, for the most part, forensics is forensics, but public sector, okay. Definitely bigger money in public sector, so not discouraging that. Quite long, okay. And there's definitely interesting things in law enforcement that you get to do that you don't get to do in public sector. So again, pluses and minuses for both. Okay, all right, cool. Looks like pretty good mix there. All right, excellent. All right, so now let's kind of move on. Anybody recognize these two guys here?
No idea.
No idea. All right, so this is from probably maybe 3-4 years ago. There was a TV series on Netflix called Mindhunter. So these two guys were the 2 FBI agents that the show is about. And basically the show was about the behavioral analysis unit. Right, these are the mine hunters that are at the FBI based out of Quantico over here. And the show is interesting because it talks about this behavioral analysis unit, which has nothing to do with forensics. However, as part of the show, they actually have a character, this guy over here. And so, again, they don't actually talk about it in the show. They just kind of hinted at it. They actually I don't think they even gave this character a name. But if you actually know the background of this particular case, it's actually very, very interesting. And this is the the first case I'm going to talk about is when forensics actually does a really good job. And this is one of the very early on digital forensics cases. So this guy is, his name is Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK serial killer. The BTK stands for bind, torture, and kill. Sad, sick name, but that was actually his nickname because that's what he did to his victims. And he was unfortunately a pretty prolific serial killer back in the 70s through the 90s in Wichita, Kansas. And this is actually real. I'm sorry, in case people are wondering. The TV show is fictitious based on real characters, but this guy actually was a real serial killer. And so in the part of the show, you'll see his logo on his shirt there. It says ADT. He actually worked for the company ADT, which is a very large company now that does security work. And so one of his job there was to install security alarms for people. And so basically what happened was between the time period from 1974 to 1991, which I'm guessing is before most of the people in this class were born, Dennis Rader actually killed at least 10 people in the Wichita, Kansas area. And basically after 91, he kind of faded away. Nobody really knows why he faded away. Maybe he actually was married with kids and stuff, so maybe his family needed a little more attention. So he, wasn't able to do his sick deeds there. But in around 2004, I guess he was a little hunger for attention again. So he actually sent some communication to the local TV stations and was trying to drum up attention again for himself. And one of the things he asked the media was whether if he put some of his writings, right? Basically, these serial killers, these crazy people, they love writing manifestos and whatnot. So he actually had some documents that he wanted the press to see, and he asked if whether once he puts that in, the text documents on a floppy disk, whether the police can use that floppy disk and look at the data and find him. And so the press basically says, oh no, the police, they're not that smart. They can't figure that out from a floppy disk. So that's what this guy did. He wrote some documents and put it onto a floppy disk and sent it to the press. And then the police got a hold of the floppy disk and some very early on examiners, right? Again, this is back in 2004, so 20 years ago. They examined this floppy disk, and on this floppy disk was a Word document. And the examiners looked into the Word document and was looking at all the metadata, which I'm hoping you guys have covered at some point. And within the metadata was the words Christ Lutheran Church. And then another piece of metadata said last modified by Dennis. And so the police basically did a search for Christ Lutheran Church and the word Dennis, and he came up with this guy right here, this guy, who was the president of the Christ Lutheran Church Council at that point. And so they basically had some clue of who this person is, and so they monitored him for a long time. And basically they were able to arrest him in 2005 and went to trial. He actually pled guilty and actually talked to the prosecutors about what he did for his 10 victims. And he's serving 10 consecutive life sentences now in federal prison. So it's actually a great story of how forensics did a great job. And again, this is 20 years ago on a floppy disk. So, all right. So for us, basically we spend the bulk of our lives, as you know, on these media devices. A lot of people, you know, when they're in their office, they sit on their desk and they're on the computer. So there's a lot of information there. And then when they're not at their desk, or actually, I guess even some people, when they're at their desk, they still have their phones on them. And so these things have even more information because people never leave anywhere without their phones, right? The other day, I was actually really surprised. My phone gave me an alert and told me that my average daily screen time was like 6 hours or something. And I was just absolutely shocked because I thought that only, you know, teenage kids would be on their phone for 6 hours. But apparently that's my average screen time, which again, I was very shocked at. Then I kind of thought about it. It's like, you know, I'm actually on the phone quite a bit. Like, you know, even when I'm working out, you know, I'm listening to music or watching, you know, YouTube videos or whatever it is, that thing is on and it's recording all this kind of information. And so there's a lot of stuff that's on here, right? And so these things are very, very important. So that floppy disk, I think in 2004, it was probably in 3.5, 3.5 inch, because I think 5.5s were already out of favor by 2000. All right, so in this class, you guys are basically doing a lot of learning about these devices and other things. All right, so let's kind of break it down into what do forensics scientists or forensic examiners really do. For the most part, there's 4 categories of what you would do in the law enforcement world. In the private sector, it's probably similar, but again, I'm going to be talking about mostly law enforcement because that's what I'm familiar with. So the number one big category is to collect the evidence, right? This is really, they're all important. But this part is, I think, even more important because if you don't collect the evidence properly, right, you're going to basically have issues in court with, well, you know, was the evidence tainted, you know, all kinds of problems with that. So second category is the preservation of evidence. Again, this is also very important because once again, when you're in a court of law, they're going to be very, very interested in, hey, did you actually make sure things are not tainted in the evidence you're presenting to court? The third category is analysis of the evidence. And this is probably the one that takes the most time, right? Because you're going to have to comb through and look through the phone or the cloud storage or whatever it is for what you're interested in. And we used to have a joke in our lab that there's a easy button. You can just hit the button and you'll find the evidence. But, you know, unfortunately, there's no such thing. You really have to dig and figure out what you're trying to look for. In the law enforcement world, if you're lucky that your detective or your agent or your prosecutor knows exactly what they're looking for, then it makes it a lot easier. But a lot of times they will seize some piece of evidence and they go, you know what? I don't know what I'm looking for. This guy's guilty of something. Find me the evidence. And that's when it gets really, really difficult, right? Because there's a lot of stuff going on all these devices. And then the last thing in my chart here is testifying in court, because the ultimate goal of law enforcement seizing evidence is prosecution, right? So unless your subject pleads guilty, you're probably going to go to court. And so your evidence that you examined will come up as something that needs to be talked about. Okay, so these are the 4 big categories. All right, so the first big category, like I said, is the collection. And in the law enforcement world, we are very, very aware and conscious of officer safety. And when I was a lab director, this was my number one thing, right? I want all my guys to come home every night to their family. So officer safety is very, very, very important. So this might be a little fuzzy and hard to read on your screens, but you know, go ahead and take a look at the scene here. And if I can get my head out of the way. All right, I'm just gonna get my stuff out of the way here. Take a look at this particular, take a look at this particular scene here. This is actually a real search scene that we came up on. and either type in the chat session or chime in and tell me what you guys see. All right, so you see a TV. Okay, what about the TV? You see the computer, right? So that's good. All right, computers are what we want to seize. So those are good. Some PDAs. Yeah, I know this is a little old. Yep. Landmine. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, these are real, and some of these are a little old, but still valuable. Something under the desk. Yes, very good. Very good. So there is definitely a lot going on here. Some other things that you might want to think about is this little, oh, I guess I can't put my hand out there. I guess it cuts me off. But there's a post-it board over there with a lot of pieces of papers and post-it notes, and even on the desk, there's post-it notes. You would be surprised at how many people actually write down their passwords on post-it notes still. Actually, myself included. You know, when you're at a search scene, definitely look around for those kind of things. Yeah, 2 ergonomic mics. Oh, wow, I didn't even notice that. You're right, yeah. Yeah, one of them, it looks like it's wrapped up on that old computer, so maybe that one's broken. But yeah, a lot of cables, a lot of stuff going on. So we kind of walk through here. So one of the things that we would notice as law enforcement is that there is a TV monitor. Somebody had mentioned that before, and there's a little camera there. So what's happening here is that this particular guy, whoops, went a little too far. This particular subject actually had video cameras outside of his residence. So he's able to actually watch people come and go on his property. So that's one thing to be aware of. Another thing to be aware of is somebody did mention that there's stuff underneath the desk. There's definitely a lot of stuff underneath the desk, one of which is there was actually a gun in that little pocket over there. So that is absolutely a officer safety issue. I talked earlier about the camera. So this is the inward pointing camera, which is also interesting, right? I talked about the outward pointing camera so he can see who's outside, but this is an inward pointing camera. And in this particular case, what he used it for was that his buddy, you know, down the street was able to monitor him. And they have a little agreement going that if the police ever came into his house, the buddy would remote log in and wipe all his data, right? So that's something to be aware of, right? I think you guys, oh, I guess you guys do phones next week, but in phone forensics, right, there's one thing you got to watch for is people wiping their phones. So same thing here on computers, people can wipe things remotely on computers as well. So beware of that. And we also found a bunch of boxes with wires. Somebody had mentioned the wires and cables and whatnot. So good observation there. And underneath all that, there was actually a very suspicious device that we had the bomb squad look at. And their conclusion was that that was actually a bomb that had capability to explode, but it didn't have the payload. It didn't have the actual explosive device, but it had the triggers, it had the first stage. So everything was there except for the big part that goes kaboom. So this guy was getting ready for something. So all these things are definitely things to be aware of. Okay. And a lot of folks kind of say, well, you know, that's a special case. That doesn't happen so often. And when I first doing these presentations, again, this slide a little bit dated, and we haven't had an event. But however, 3 years ago now, an event unfortunately did happen, and we actually excuse me, this gets me a little choked up here. There was a search in Florida for a child exploitation case. And on the entry team, we actually had 2 FBI agents shot and killed, and then 3 other, no, excuse me, again, a little emotional, 3 others injured. And so this was a case where a lot of people just go, oh, it's just a crimes against children, is a child porn case. It's not a big deal. But it is a big deal. It is a big deal to these two agents who basically died. And they were working on some actually really important cases that in total led to about 548 arrests worldwide, and then identified and rescued 296 abused children. So this is really important work that these two agents were doing. But then unfortunately, it was a bad situation where the subject actually had cameras, a Ring camera specifically, outside of his property. And he actually saw the agents approaching his doorway. And in this particular case, this guy was a computer programmer with no criminal history, but he actually had an assault rifle in his home. And when he saw the agents approached, he basically took out his assault rifle and just sprayed the front of his house indiscriminately. No, I'm sorry, not even a house, his apartment complex indiscriminately. So shots went through the front door, shots went through the living room windows, into the opposite side of his apartment. So this guy had absolutely no regard for his neighbors or any other innocent people in that apartment complex. And again, they end up killing the two agents and wounding three other people. So very important stuff. All right, so next thing is the second stage of preserving evidence, right? So why is this important to preserve evidence? Because digital evidence actually is very fragile, right? If you don't handle it properly, you can taint it or destroy it, and you would look really bad in court, which nobody wants to do. One of the things that, I think a lot of digital forensics class talk about is just on a Windows machine, right? If you go onto the scene and you're going to be looking at the Windows or any computer for that matter, just the act of starting up that Windows machine alone, you would change over 300 files and their date and timestamps to reflect the current date and timestamp, right? So there's a rule of, hey, if it's off, leave it off, right? Because if you start turning things on and start looking through computers, you're going to change all the timestamps and really screw things up. So just things to be aware of when you're on scene. Other things, there's definitely a lot of programs out there that are made to be destructive. Like I said, in the above case with the camera, right? The one guy said, hey, to his buddy down the street, if the cops come, wipe my computer, right? So they actually have destructive programs that are there. I've actually been on a search scene where we go into the house, and once we find the computer's actually wiping, because as the owner answered the front door, he basically knew it was cops, so he initiated the wiping program and was trying to delay us from coming into the house while the computer is wiping. But we actually was able to make entry into the rear of the house and was able to stop the program from wiping that computer, was able to get something, right? Versus let the entire thing wipe. So preserving is also important. And this is yet another case in Palo Alto, right? The Bay Area backyard there. Again, this is a little dated, but again, this is a case that was something that we handled at our lab. And this is an interesting case where this lady got killed by her boyfriend, and he obviously denied it and whatnot. And then he, set her and her house on fire. It's a really sad case. The Palo Alto police was able to recover the computer in this condition. So it's all burnt and charred, as you can see. So a little bit of a challenge to get to the evidence. But we did it. We actually was able to dig through all this burnt, charred junk and get to the hard drive when it was able to retrieve the data out of the hard drive, or at least retrieve enough data out of the hard drive on her computer so that we can actually see her chat log, and we're able to reconstruct enough of it to see that they had an argument, and then he actually literally threatened to kill her on the chat session, and actually talked about how he's gonna what he was going to do with her, which he literally did. So he was convicted and went to jail. So it was a good case. It was a good case because when we got this computer, we just said, what are we going to do with this thing? But our examiners were really good. All right, here's another example of a case that we did. This happily married couple here, Ruby and Jason, they got married. And at some point, they had some issues. And so one day, the police were called to the scene, and the husband, Jason, claimed that he found his wife, Ruby's body found floating in the pool in the backyard, and he denied any wrongdoing. He said he was at work or something, but the cops basically figured out he was lying about something. So they arrested him and were going to put him to trial for the homicide of his wife. And Jason was able to obtain a very, very good lawyer, Bay Area lawyer named Tony Serra. I think some of the folks who've been around might have heard of Tony Serra. He's still alive, this guy. He's 90 something, but he's still alive. They made a movie about him in 2006 or so, starring James Woods, the actor, as Tony Serra. But anyway, so Tony was able to get an acquittal for Jason for his murder trial. So he did his job as the defense attorney. And then what happened shortly after was that Mr. Serra himself went to federal prison for tax evasion. So that's usually frowned upon. So don't do that, folks. Even if you're a great attorney, you're still going to go to jail. All right. So in the meantime, what happened is that the family of the deceased lady, Ruby, was really not happy with Jason because they know they killed their beloved Ruby. So they hired a private attorney, Ms. Shao over here, to prosecute, I gotta get out of the way here, to prosecute them in a civil case. Prosecute Jason on a civil case. And so Ms. Zhao was working on that for quite a while until one day she gets killed. Somebody basically goes up to her in her office and shoots her dead. So it's very unfortunate. And everybody obviously immediately suspects Jason. So the police seize his computers and whatnot. And while they're going through his browser history, they found a couple of pretty interesting things. They found his Google searches for Miss Xiao's home address and office address. They found Jason's internet search records for looking for a .25 caliber pistol, which, if you know anything about guns, is a pretty rare gun. It's not something that a common person would look for. And that was actually a weapon. The .25 caliber weapon was what was used to kill Miss Zhao. So a lot of these things are interesting, but they're circumstantial evidence, right? And so what happened there was Jason had a defense where he claimed that he was at home during Miss Zhao's murder doing day trading. And so when the forensic examiners looked through the computer, there definitely was traces of activity during that time, and the stock brokerage definitely had records of him doing some stock trades. And the examiners kept on digging and digging and digging, and actually found some interesting things where it was discovered that there was no proof that Jason was actually at the keyboard, because there was a lot of automated things that was done to do the trades. So essentially what happened was that Jason basically just had a little robot make it look like he was on the computer where he actually wasn't. And so eventually he was found guilty of the second murder for the attorney, not for his wife or his dead wife. But in any case, computer forensics did the job of finding out the truth. All right, this one I might come back to in the interest of time because I'm just yammering on for a little long. All right, so this is when computer forensics actually did not do a good job. Again, this is a little bit dated, but it's still important. Anybody know this lady here? What case this is? Her name was Casey Anthony. That makes that rings a bell. Again, this is a little bit older. All right, so Casey Anthony was accused of killing her baby daughter. Yep, a lot of you mentioned that. And so essentially, she was found not guilty. And there was a lot of issues with the prosecution of this case, including the attorneys on both sides and the forensic examiner. But I'm just going to focus on the digital forensics. So one of the things that they looked at was the search history on the Mozilla Firefox. And so the internet history of the computer at the home basically showed that there were a lot of Google searches related to chloroform. Okay, and again, chloroform was used to adopt the baby because she was supposedly, abducted, and they found traces of chloroform in the car trunk and all that kind of stuff. And what happened was that the expert witness basically said that the term chloroform was found on the computer 84 times. And so they basically was pushing for the fact that it was premeditated murder and this and that. And eventually they had a defense witness who basically crushed the prosecution witness by saying, hey, yeah, you can say that, if you just run your tool, the tool is going to say, hey, I found the word chloroform 84 times. But if you as the examiner don't know how to interpret the result of the tool, this is where you're going to get in trouble, because there is really only one search, right? But because the Mozilla database works in different ways, right? There's backups and whatnot. That's how 84 instances came up, okay? So you got to be careful, right? So be careful of push button forensics. You really need to actually understand how things work, right? Not just in the tool, but the browser itself and how it keeps the history database and all that kind of stuff. So this is when forensics actually did not do any favors to the law enforcement world. All right, next one. This is actually very topical. This literally just came up yesterday in the news. This is the University of Idaho in Moscow, not Moscow, Russia, but Moscow, Idaho. So 4 of these kids were murdered in their home, and basically the suspect was found much later. And in the court proceedings yesterday, basically he was trying to provide an alibi by saying that, hey, I'm going to have an expert witness testify that by looking at cell tower data, it is going to show that the suspect was nowhere near the house. He was actually driving around. They don't deny him being creepy and driving around at 2 in the morning or whatever it is, but he was driving around on the other side of town, right? Not near these murdered kids' house, where other parts of the forensic data show that he was. So now we have 2 different forensic experts going to be battling out in the court, right? One is going to say, hey, from the phone data, it shows that this guy was actually near the houses multiple times. And then it also showed that he had turned off the phone on purpose because he was missing literally for like a couple-hour period there. And then the defense attorney is going to say, hey, wait, from the cell tower pinging, we can see that he was not there. So again, you as the forensic examiner really need to know what the data means, right? Interpretation of data is going to be very important in court. So that's my message there. Again, very topical because this literally came out yesterday. All right, so I'm going to move on to job stuff because we talked about that earlier. These are some stats that I garnered recently, looking at the field of digital forensics. It's about half and half, with a little more women than men. And from my experience, that's probably not too far off. I think for a long time, it was, probably like a third women at the very most, and it's definitely inched up. It's interesting anyways. The median salary is about 112K. But that actually is for the general field of information security, which the digital forensics is part of. And I've seen, ranges from like 90 to 150. So it's pretty broad range, right? And again, it depends on where you live. If you're in the Bay Area, you will definitely get a higher salary versus if you were in Kansas or somewhere, right? It'll be much lower. The next number is actually very encouraging, right? So from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, they basically project that the growth in this industry, in this field, sorry, I keep on getting in the way here, can't really see some of that, is 32% basically in the next 10 years. So definitely very, very encouraging if you're getting into this field. Next one down is the promotion. If, like I said, I was an FBI agent and really love my job. Starting salary for an FBI agent right now in San Francisco is about $82,000. And then it goes up from there as as you move along your journey. But we do have pay caps, much like baseball players and basketball players, but unfortunately our pay caps are not in the millions. Our pay caps is probably the similar pay cap or a similar range as what a junior congressman makes, which is about $192,000. So that's actually not bad. Even in San Francisco, that's not bad. Okay. And in the FBI, we hire both for doing forensics work. We utilize both agents and support staff or professional staff. And so there are some folks who are part of the FBI who are digital forensics folks as their profession, not just agents. And the difference there is that if you're an FBI agent, your life is basically controlled by the FBI, meaning if they need to transfer you to Kansas tomorrow because there's a large case, you're moving to Kansas tomorrow and your family can follow whenever they can. So some people don't think that's reasonable, but that's what you sign up for. If you're a professional staff, like I said, the guys who do the digital forensics and you're hired into San Francisco, they cannot move you, right? So you will basically be in San Francisco for as long as you want. But if a job comes up in Kansas City that you want to go to, you can, of course, put in for the transfer to Kansas City, and the Bureau might pay for your move if it's a dire need and whatnot. So pluses and minuses for both. Oh yeah, so I'm sorry, I missed some of the questions earlier. I was too excited about talking. How did you get your first role?
No worries. I can summarize the questions for you, Sherman.
Okay.
Right. So there was a question earlier, was, how does law enforcement vet experts? So when you were presenting around the case of like forensics gone bad, someone was curious, like how did they vet the expert?
Okay, that's a very good question. So in terms of being qualified in, there's a couple of different things here. There's qualifying as an expert and then vetting an expert. So let me talk about in court first. When you go to court and you want to be an expert, you actually need to be qualified. And the only person that can do that is the judge. So what the process is that your prosecutor or your defense attorney, whoever you're working for, will basically put you up on the stand, and then you will go through your resume and talk about your education, and you will talk about your experience, and if you have any previous court testimony experience, you'll bring all that up, and then the judge will basically determine from all of the information that you gave whether you are a qualified expert for that particular field, right? So once the judge qualifies you, then the next phase that you can go ahead and talk about the browser artifacts and whatnot. So from a agency standpoint within the FBI, what we do is that we have certain certificates, if you will, and we basically, when we hire you into the FBI, we will put you through a training program that will last anywhere from 12 to 24 months, depending on your background and experience and whatnot. And within that 12 to 24 months, you'll go through a lot of different classes, basically starting with basic computer knowledge, like, A+ kind of thing. You will go through basic networking. You will go through file systems. You'll go through Windows forensics, Mac forensics, maybe some Linux, cell phones, all that kind of stuff. So, you'll go through many, many classes with many, many hours of those topics. And then in the meantime, you're also working real cases, right? So you'll be assigned a coach who will be monitoring you and helping you as you work the cases. And so at the end of the whole process, you'll actually have done, multiple real cases, and you will have written many, many reports. And then we will actually put you through something called moot court, where it basically mimics a real court where we actually have real attorneys and judges and so forth. And we'll pick one of your cases and kind of put you on the stand like you were in a real situation. And so that's actually a really good experience for a lot of people to go through because they've never even been in a courtroom. And it can get very nerve-wracking, right? And so at the end of that, once you pass everything, then we certify you as an examiner. And then that actually carries a lot of credentials when you go into court and say, hey, I'm an FBI certified examiner. Then the judge would usually go, okay, that sounds good. You're good to go. So I hope that answers your questions on that one.
I think there's another question. How did you get your first role within the Bureau, and are referrals relevant in public sector?
All right, so my first role was, I was just basically assigned. The FBI, they say that they look at your background and then they put you in the most appropriate squad to work particular crimes, right? Because in the FBI, we're a federal agency that has a very broad scope, right? So we work anything from counterterrorism, to counterintelligence, to cybersecurity, to mortgage fraud, to criminal gangs and drugs. So the very, very wide range, right? So like I said, the FBI likes to tell people that they look at your background, but from my experience, I think they just throw a dart and then wherever you land, that's where you go. So the first squad that I was put into was a foreign counterintelligence squad. And they put me on that particular squad because they saw that I was Chinese. So they thought I would speak Chinese and be able to work that matter. But I actually don't speak Mandarin, so I was kind of useless with it. But doesn't matter. I actually did great work on that squad. And then years later, I discovered the whole digital forensics world and actually transferred there. And then the second part of the question was, are referrals relevant in the public sector? I'm not sure I understand what a referral means. So Raven, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I was just kind of saying in tech, like if you want to apply to a Google, it's like you need a referral, right? Basically, in referral in the tech sector carry a lot of weight.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
wondering in the public sector, is that the case as well? Or is it some other kind of just, you submit your best application and they really just review them or,
Yeah, so that's a good question. So supposedly things are supposed to be fair, but life in general is just not really fair. So the more people because if you apply for most of these federal agencies, they'll ask you, hey, do you know somebody who is already in here? And most of that time it's they want to make sure that it's not your wife hiring husband and mother hiring kid or whatever it is, right? Which is good. I mean, those things you want to watch out for. But a lot of times they do want to make sure that you have somebody who's a good reference, right? So having referrals absolutely is very helpful. And Christina, you are absolutely right. Hiring is very painful, both from the employee side and from the employer side. When I was a hiring manager, hiring people into my lab, I had a couple of stories where it's just really pull my hair out because the government just makes it so hard for me to hire people. One instance was there was a lady who had actually worked in the FBI for 5 or 6 years, and then she decided to go to the private sector. She was there for like 3-4 years. And then I was trying to hire her back because she wanted to do digital forensics. And so she was already, vetted and everything, but it still took me like a year and a half to get her back, which is insane. So yeah, Christina's got some great website there. And how stressful was your job as an agent in general? That's a good question. So I love my job. Like I said, I really, really had a great time. I had, you know, 2 different careers prior to joining the FBI. And I love, you know, my careers prior to the FBI, but I still love being with the FBI the most. So it gave me a lot of flexibility in terms of how I wanted to do things. The agency is very broad again in terms of what it covers, right? So if, for people who get bored easily, right? If you get tired of investigating mortgage fraud, you can go into you know, like I said, digital forensics. If you get tired of doing that, you can work on counterintelligence. If you get tired of that, you can, you know, be on a SWAT team or something, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on, so you can't get bored. But back to the question of stress, it can be stressful, but it's one of those things that every individual handles it a little bit differently. So I can tell you for my work, a lot of it, I was pretty much on. When I first started, we had pagers, right? So I had pagers on me literally 24/7. And then when the cell phone came out, I had you know, a cell phone on me, and it 24/7. I would get calls, especially when I was the lab director, because anytime there was some kind of incident, right, I would get a call because I would need to send my people out to do what I need to do, and literally that would happen any day, anytime. Mostly it's on Friday at 4:55 p.m. That is when most incidences happen. I don't know how, but somehow the bad guys know that's the time you want to cause a problem, because that causes Sherman the most stress. Because everybody's pretty much getting ready to leave, and I go, oh, no, you can't go because I need you to be over here working on this case. So yeah, so stress, everybody takes it differently, but yeah, it's there just like any other job. All right, so have you been in with the private sector before the FBI? Yeah, so like I said, I had 2 different careers before that. I was in the private sector, and you know, I actually had my own companies and stuff, so I did a lot of different things. Why the transition? So the transition happened at 9/11. I'm that age where when 9/11 happened, it really, really affected me a lot, because I was, like I said, I was in the private sector. I actually had my own company. I was making good money. But then I realized, hey, you know what is the point of having all this money when all my friends are dead because, you know, we're being attacked, right? So I had a complete change in outlook in life, and that's why I shifted to the government service. All right, next question. Being able to get a security clearance is also key to blah, blah, blah. Yep, yeah, you got to get a clearance. And that's one of those things where you got to make good life choices, right? If you smoke pot constantly, I'm not judging, I'm just saying that is a key factor, right, to whether you can get a security clearance. So, you know, just got to make life choices. What else? How much time are your agents spending parsing hex data from drive images? Is it a common thing, or is it a tiny piece? Okay, so as much as I made fun of the automated tools, most of the time when we start a case, it really is just getting those automated tools going to parse the data, right? And you're not going to be parsing it by hand, because for the most part, those tools are really good, right? You get what you pay for. Those tools are expensive, and they do get a lot of good information. So if you have a general case, or a case that you know exactly what you want, like, oh, I want the browser artifacts, or I want to carve out the deleted files, those tools are great, right? So I would say most of the time they do not spend time looking at the hex. However, there are definitely cases where you do need to do that. And those are the special cases where I have special people who know how to do that, right? Because, you know, if you are out imaging something, and a lot of times it's not a perfect world, right? You come back and, or not even image something, you're bringing back the data, the hard drive, it could be damaged, right? So now you have a damaged image, if you will. And so a lot of the automated tools may or may not be able to deal with that. So you would have to know how to manually look at it using some of the hex tools. Okay. All right, next thing is autopsy and FTK commonly. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Autopsy, great tool, right? I'm sure you guys know you have a free version. So a lot of classes that I've taught, especially overseas, when they don't have the budget that U.S. companies do, I highly recommend autopsy because you can get a lot of good stuff for free. FTK Imager itself, not FTK, the big tool, is also free, and it's a fantastic tool for doing imaging, memory capture. So that is definitely still used all over the place. Yeah, so yeah, those tools are still very good. All right, I think
So we'll take maybe one more. Do you have any tools you recommend for students to learn, and you felt like, oh, this is the newest shiniest thing?
Interesting. All right, so it's not the newest and shiniest thing, but it is my favorite thing is Linux. Most people kind of shy away from it because they don't like typing. They like to just click. You know what? That's okay. It's not for everybody, but I personally really love Linux because once you learn it and figure out how to use it, it is really extremely powerful. A lot of tools that are out there, like Autopsy, right, has Linux versions that you can use. FTK Imager, if you don't know, there actually is a Linux version out there you can download. It's hard to find. They don't really promote it, but there is a Linux version of FTK Imager. It is also free. So if you like to batch things, right, that's actually what I use that for, is that a lot of times when we seize hard drives within the FBI, we're not just seizing one or two, we're seizing a dozen or 30 hard drives. And so, if you want to just sit there and image one by one, it is going to take a long time. So I like to just basically write a script and just, have everything queued up. So over the weekend, I can get the machine's doing my work, right? While I'm gone. So I'll write the scripts and have them basically image each one of the disk and process and parse the drives, images, and so forth. So I absolutely love Linux. And there's a bunch of different distros out there for forensics. One of the big ones that I like is Caine, Caine. Another one out there is Paladin. Oh, so Caine, yeah, they're all free. Anyways, Caine is out of Italy. That one's free. Paladin is built by a company called Samuri, who basically also gives it away for free. They are known for their Mac tools. There's other distros that a lot of people use, but I don't like them as much because they're not specifically for Linux. So Kali, I think a lot of people have heard of Kali. It's a great tool for hackers if you're doing the networking stuff, but for forensics, it's okay. It's okay. Caine has got more tools that I find much more catered to digital forensics. So Linux is my tool of choice. It's not shiny, but I love it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, students have been actually, playing with these tools in our labs.
All right.
We don't have Caine, but we have like a lot of other labs are primarily based on Linux.
Okay.
Other quick question. I know like SANS offers forensics training with their SIFT distro.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
Yep.
But for like students coming out with like 1 or 2 years of community college cybersecurity education, what type of certification, if any, would you recommend to kind of get a bit of foothold in the industry?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think the challenge in a lot of these certifications is that they're really expensive. So that's one of those things that if you're just coming out of community college, it's hard for me to recommend, a SANS course for somebody because that's going to cost them like $6,000, right? So it's hard for me to do that. However, I mean, that is the SANS classes are fantastic. their certifications are really, really difficult to obtain. So it's not like if you sat through the class, you'll automatically get the certificate. You actually have to earn those SAN certificates. But other things that are a little bit cheaper is the CompTIA has like the A+, Net Plus, Security Plus, Linux Plus, right? So I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the CompTIA.
Yeah, a bunch of students are doing Security Plus.
Oh, okay, okay. So those are good. Those are definitely very widely recognized by the general cybersecurity world. There's other more vendor-specific ones, right? So if you're into phones, Magnet is a great one, but again, those cost a little more money. FTK or Access Data, that's the company that makes FTK. They have a certificate called ACE, ACE. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's basically they're certifying you that you know how to use their the FTK lab tool. Ncase is another company that has the Ncase certification. Again, that is a more vendor specific, right, certification, but another very widely recognized in the forensics world. And if you're in the law enforcement world, you can go to NW3C, which is, let me type it in here, which is the National White Collar Crime, NW3C.org. So this is basically primarily for law enforcement, and it's free, right? If you're in the law enforcement field. I don't know if anybody else on this chat is law enforcement, but they have a lot of courses on forensics and other things. And they also give some kind of certification, which is also good.
That's great too. Awesome. I know we are a few minutes over. Just wanted to respect your time as well, Sherman. Any other final questions, thoughts, closing thoughts? Actually, that's you would like to add?
No, like I said, I've really enjoyed my time in the FBI, but what I've done now is I've moved on. Actually, kind of here, I'm going to do a little self promotion here. Sorry.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'm retired from there, but I still am in the forensics world. So I'm doing a lot of consulting work in the DC region for, government and other private companies on forensics. And one of the other little things I'm doing is that I have a YouTube channel called Blue Monkey Forensics. So the up here. So if you go into YouTube and just look up Blue Monkey Forensics, I have a ton of videos on various different topics on forensics. A lot of it is on Linux, and I basically start from the beginning. So if you don't know anything about Linux, you can basically start from there. There's one series in there. It literally just starts from the first one, and it will show you how to create a VM, where to download the ISOs, and then start with the basic commands of ls and cd and all those kind of things. So, and it's all free because I like to give back to the community if I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chairman. Really appreciate your time, and thank you for all the work you've been doing, and thank you for sharing all the advice and helping us get acquainted with forensics as you see it. Thank you again.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and best wishes to you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Sherman.
Great seeing you again.
All right, thank you, Errol. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, awesome, guys. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you all for good questions. How was it?
That was great.
Excellent.
Very informative.
Awesome. Yeah. So I took some notes, but if any of you guys have taken notes and would like to share it with the class, please do so. Especially around the tools and the links Sherman mentioned, I highly recommend kind of doing that. And then it was great for him to kind of reinforce that, Linux is something which is foundational, especially if you're doing anything security. And like as he mentioned, right, like if you have to image like 40 hard disks, the best way to do that is automated, right? Awesome. Cool. So what we can do is we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll come back. I think it's 10:05 right now, so we'll come back at 10:15. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think Sherman has Instagram, but I will ask. And I will post his LinkedIn on Discord as well. Okay. Awesome. All right, guys, let's do that. Let's take a 10-minute break. I'll put a timer up here and we'll come back at 10:15.
Professor, if you're speaking, I think you're muted.
No. Awesome. All right, welcome guys. Thank you for letting me know. All right, so the first thing we're gonna cover is your final project, and then we'll jump on the content of today's class. Your final project is 500 points. It's 1/3 of the class, and it's in 2 parts. And I expect you guys to present your work in the final class on May 3rd as well. So the first part of the project is a forensics case study. You are like Sherlock Holmes. You must follow the clues and evidence of what happened using the tools and techniques you have learned in this class. And your case study is following. And so this is the link. I'm going to click on it. So the case study is BRG Software is a small software engineering company that writes applications. You work at BRJ's IT department and administer several servers. Your company's software creates source code, and you are responsible for maintaining company's domain name, email addresses, who is contact information, so on and so forth. On September 8, 2003, the user known as Richard came to you and said he discovered someone else logging into his account when he issued the W command. You discovered that the IP address Richard reported was 1060213. It's a Linux machine. After you realize that you must not have applied the latest security patches, you break out a call set. Your BIOS is going to be upset. You immediately decide to write all the network traffic you have captured for past couple of months to CD. After that, you run a live response process on the victim's machine, which is machine this 1006021. And because the machine is not used heavily, you are able to take offline and perform a forensics duplication to preserve the evidence. You begin a chain of custody for all the evidence you collected. So this is the case study. And now you have to find if anything wrong was done in this case and what exactly happened. So let's go back to that. For all the data which is mentioned in that case study, there is a zip file here for that. And I will show you what that zip file contains. The zip file contains BRJ software, this information. It has a brjdev.dd. It is basically a Linux dump of the whole hard disk. It's 181 megabytes. It's basically the hard disk of that machine. Then the live response, which is mentioned in the description, has has some messages here. You can look at the messages there. And then the network activity is captured in PCAPs, and that is available as in the network activity folder. So you can see all the network activity there. Okay. So these are three. The forensics duplication is the hard disk, live response is the messages he collected from the machine, and then network activities are the PCAPs and other network information. So with that information, here's what I expect you guys to do: create a report using the template. And so what that template is you can use this template or you can create your own, this is your forensics, what did you look at? What methodology did you do? What's your conclusion? And then any of the relevant information. So this is a template which you can use, or you can choose to, use any of the standard ones. So this is what I expect you to guys to do is, do the incident assessment, initial analysis of report by Richard, verification of the address, its activities, do the evidence acquisition, see if there are any deleted files in that DD, and then analyze this information. What I want you guys to do is analyze as if you were a forensic analyst looking at it, right? And so you're looking for any indicators of compromise and such. I'm in your report. What I'm looking for is, thoroughness of your analysis and ability to identify the breach details, and then professionalism and clarity of report. Okay, so these are some of the criteria I'm looking for. So this is the case study you are going to work, and you will possibly use all the tools which we have discussed. You might have to. There is, of course, you're going to probably use Wireshark for network dumps. Some of like live. So for the live data, you can use the memory dump analysis like volatility. So there are a number of tools which you have learned in your labs. You will all apply them in this case study. And then once the case study report is done, on the last class, I am expecting that you guys present the report. So I'm looking for these things in the report. You don't have to make a PowerPoint presentation. You can just present your report. Okay. So this assignment is 300 points. And your presentation is 100 points. So, so that's part one of your final course. The second part of your final course is this assignment. Again, this you can do as individual or groups of 2 to 4, max 4. So this is your second part of final project. What I'm expecting you guys to do is research a digital forensics tool. So what I'm looking for you to do is, choose a digital forensic tool that interests you. It could be a tool with email phishing, recovery of deleted files, browser history analysis, social media forensics, mobile forensics, network forensics, anything else. Formulate a use case related to your topic that presents a problem, and pick one tool and research that tool and create a presentation on that tool, just one tool. And this is a sample of what you would make in the presentation, like maybe a title slide, introduction, use case for the tool, how the tool works, application of the tool, any conclusions, and then the references. So you can use this format or create your own slides. And I expect you guys to kind of, present this tool in your final presentation. So that is 100 points. And then the presentation along with the forensic case study is 100 points. So these 3 activities are your final project. Any questions on those?
Yes, hi, Professor.
Yeah.
How long is the individual presentation? The one with the PowerPoint, the tools that we explore?
Yeah, so 10 to 15 minutes is what you will get in total for presenting your case study as well as the tool. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick
So-
question. So,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
okay, the only part of the final course project that we're doing in a team is a digital forensics tool research assignment. Is that correct?
No, both things you can do it's one team.
Oh, okay.
Either you can do the whole project. This is one project in a team, or if you don't want to be part of a team or for any other reasons, you can also do it just by yourself.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Awesome. So any other questions? The next thing we'll be doing is we'll be forming teams right now. So I wanna do that.
I guess I have a question about so we're doing the main case study in Teams. A significant part of that is like basically going through the data to figure out what the breach was. How do we do that as a team, or are you suggesting that we kind of split this up in a way that people do different parts of it? Do you have a vision for that? And if so, could you share it?
Yeah, so an easy, simple way maybe to do that is, in your, like, you can, like, these are different things in, like, one person can do network analysis, one person can do memory analysis, one can do messaging analysis. So you can kind of do division of labor per tool basis, like, and then they kind of create a report on that from what they found from that tool. Like one person could also maybe look at deleted files. And then maybe one other person and you can review the work of the person who kind of looked at it and created the report. So you can do division of labor based on on the activities you're doing. And then I think it's also helpful for you guys to, as a team, to come together and talk about that as well, like who's comfortable doing that. Someone might know Velociraptor, which is the memory forensic tool, really well. Someone might know how to work with the Linux disk drive well. So things like that, based on the skill sets, you can kind of do that. Or also on interest to learn. If someone just wants to learn something really well, they can pick up that part. So I would expect you guys to kind of do the division of labor based on the type of forensics being done. And then report could be generated by the team, and then you all work on putting it together. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Can I also ask on the tool? So my knowledge of this just comes from what we've done in the labs, and it's been pretty heavy on FTK and autopsy. I think you mentioned a couple other tools as you were explaining it. Is there going to be like a list of suggested tools we should look at for those of us that are maybe not quite familiar with anything outside of NetLabs?
No, not really, because I want just use the tools from NetLab. So like Velociraptor, which I just mentioned, you'll be doing that in the NetLabs for in this week. That's why I didn't want to
Got it.
cover this
Got
last
it.
week.
Okay. Understood. Thank you.
So, you know, you don't have to go outside of the scope of the class for this.
And also, if we form a group for teamwork, should we let you know, or is there like a sign up? Or
Yeah, so we're gonna do that right now. I know, you know, and you can also edit it yourself. So I want to share this spreadsheet with you guys. So why don't I will talk about it right now, and then for students who have missed or who are watching it in recording, they can go and edit this spreadsheet here. So I'm gonna share the link in the chat here, and I'll also post it on Discord. So let me just do that right now. Let's see, where are let me pull up. Okay, there we go. So this is the link. So what I want you guys to maybe let me know is what teams are you working in. I'm just gonna right now, you can pick a name for your team too. And if any of you guys had discussed this before, uh, and then what I want to know is so you have 2 weeks to do this, and that's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting about 10 to 15 hours of work here. Yeah. So why don't you guys take a minute? If people have teams, then why put their team names. If I know, like I just sort of let you guys know. So if you need some time to talk and form teams, that's fine too. But let's take a couple minutes and have you guys go through this and add names for your teams. Who all are going to be teamed up. And then if someone knows that they're going to be just doing it by themselves, then let me know that as well. Now we have 25 people in the class today. So we'll and like this, and then I'll also. And you know, 4 is the maximum in a team, so keep that in mind.
So, Professor, how are we gonna know who to team up with?
Can you repeat the question again?
Or should you just team us with
Oh, like, yeah, I think you can, that's why we have group discussions and the Discord. If you don't have a team, then I would just like encourage you to message in Discord and say, hey, I'm looking for a team. You know, first round, at least now I want you guys to form a team by yourselves. Then, you know, if you don't have teams, then uh, then I'll kind of put you guys together if you want to, but if you don't want to be in part of team, that's fine too. It's going to be a lot of work for one person, but if you're ready to do that, then that's okay. And so why don't you, if you just, that's why I have this time, right? Why don't, like, I see, like, who is this? Is that, sorry, I forgot. Who asked the question?
I asked the question.
Yeah. So why don't you send put a message on chat? And I already see that Nella doesn't have a team and she messaged on the chat. Maybe you can form a team. So yeah, you can combine with Nella or like, or someone else. So just message right now, use this moment. If you to find a teammate, just put it on the chat. I'm looking for a teammate.
You say, what should I go to put it on?
In the Zoom chat.
Okay.
Yeah, just use the Zoom chat for a minute now to form your teams. How about that? I see here, like, Kevin is looking for a teammate. I think Amin is looking for a teammate. Who else is looking? Nella is looking for a teammate. Alexander is looking for a teammate. Chigoziri is looking for a teammate. Hunt is looking for a teammate. So Nella is saying she just added her name. If anyone wants to join, just they are welcome to join her team. Chigoziri joined Nella's team. So as you form teams, write your names in the spreadsheet and just pick one of the empty teams. Yeah. Michelle is looking for a teammate.
The topic is really heavy and new to some of us, so it's always good to team up.
Yeah, that's why I'm giving the team option as well. Yeah. So Nella, why don't you pick like team 12? Just type in a row which is not anyone else has selected.
Yeah, I've done that twice, but thank you.
Okay, let me put your name, Nella, is okay.
Nila, are you in 12? If you're down, I can join you and Kevin as well.
Cool. No, it had like 3 people and then it disappeared. So if you guys want to join again, wherever my name wants to stay, we'll make it happen.
And then,
Thank you.
you know, if you're for some reason, if your team is not showing up here, why don't you just type it in the chat and I'll add the teams here. Okay. Okay, so team 12 is Lena, and try to, yeah, okay. Nella, Chigoziri, and Kevin is a team, right? Okay, awesome.
And Ulises.
Nella and team, is it okay if Ulysses joins you guys? Okay. All right, Mokrain, who is on your team here?
I'm not sure. I think I'm by
Oh.
myself.
Yeah, so why don't you ask other people to join you?
Yeah, I already
Okay, all right, okay.
already did. So I'm waiting
Still
for
waiting, still need a team mate.
Mokren, you can join our team 4 if you want.
uh
Don't feel
so
obligated.
team 4, okay. Sounds good, thanks.
Sure.
So just okay, let me type my name.
That's okay. I will add. Okay.
Beautiful,
Mokrain.
thanks.
Okay. Okay, awesome. All right. So looks like we have team 1. I'm gonna move team 12 to as team 12, team 2. So that way we have team. Okay. All right, so we have team 2, Nella, Chikoziri, Kevin Hunter. Team 3, Christina, Rob, Eric, Mo. Team 4, Craig, Anthony, Diego, Mokrain. Team 6, we don't have team 5 yet. Danny, Bailey, Andrew, and Jeffrey. So that's about 1, 2, 11, 17. I think there are a few more people who are left.
My name disappeared from team 2. Should I join another group team or?
Who is this?
Ulysses.
Ulysses. Okay.
I was in the Naila team, but I don't know. I'm okay to, I mean, make it work with everyone. I'm open.
Okay. So Nella, is your team fine here? Nella, Chigoziri, Kevin, and Hunter. Is that right?
Whoever put their name down, that's why I was confused in the first place, because I saw different names I thought, and then it disappeared before I could even fully take it in. But you
Yeah, I
know,
don't know what's going on.
Okay, who is Hunter? Who is Hunter? Did you talk to Nella? Please try to form your own teams right now. So Amin, why don't you take initiative and ask people to join their team? I know there are a couple more other people who are not on the teams. So Hunter, how did you talk to Nella to be on the team? Who
Oh no, my bad. I just typed my name in an empty slot, but I can move. I don't care.
Okay, so I think Hunter, I'm gonna put Ulysses here because his name was here before.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah, put me
okay,
wherever.
and
Or,
team 5, I'm gonna put Hunter. There is few more people available. So people who don't have teams, they can join team 5. Who wants to go with team 5?
Michelle.
Michelle wanna go in team 5? Who else wants to go in team 5? I see team 7 is Amin, Erdin, Ocher. Who else? Uh, okay, so I'm just gonna add you to team 5 here. Who else doesn't have a team you see on your screen? Team 7 is Amin, Erdin. Who else? Okay, the teams are as you see on your screen right now. You can move teams by talking to people on the team, but this is sort of what we have right now. No more than 4 people on a team. Anyone else remaining from teams here? Amin, you're on team 7. All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, can you add me to
I
Hunter's group?
don't know who is speaking. Can you type it
Alexander?
in the text? Yeah, can you
Yes,
type?
I sent a text in the group chat to get added to Amin's group.
Okay, Alexander here. Okay. Alexander. Okay. Anyone else? All right, looks like we're good. 1, 2, and 6, and 4, 10, and 4. Okay, guys, does these 2 teams look good?
I just have one quick question, which is that I don't know the Discord names of like my team members, or want to make sure we're able to get in touch.
Yeah,
Um,
so that's we'll talk about that in a
okay.
minute. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll talk about next steps here. Okay, guys, is anyone left in the class right now who doesn't have a team? All right, going once, going twice. All right, speak up if you're not on a team. Bridget, are you on a team? So what are you doing? Are you by yourself or you want to be on a team?
Yes, I want to be on the team. I don't.
Yes, you want to pick a team and ask.
Is number one okay if I be on their team?
Why don't you message Raven? Or there is also space in other teams. There is team 5, there is, I think, team 7 as well. Okay, Raven and Lashan, if you want one more team member, please say
Wait,
so.
oh, yeah, sure. Was that Bridget?
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah, Bridget, I'm Cyber Cupcake on Discord, so just message me
Okay.
and then I
Alright.
can loop you in.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
okay, awesome. All right. Let me see if I Hunter, Jeffrey. Looks like everyone is assigned here, right? Going once, going twice. All right, thrice. Okay, great. So why don't you guys do this? Okay, so you see your team name here. What we can do is on Discord here, you know, make make a channel for your team, and I'll show you an example. So I know this is gonna be like, you know, here is, sorry, we're gonna have pin messages, we're gonna have threads here. Okay, so you see how there are threads for everything, textbooks and things like that. So we're gonna create a thread as team 1, and you can put your name here if you want, if you have a name. So I'm gonna create team 1, and then you know, everyone in team 1 join this thread, so that people in the team know about it. This is one way. If you want to form your own Discord, that's fine too. Okay. Raven, what's your Cupcake is your Discord, right? Okay. So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
okay, so why don't people from every team create create their own thread, and so people who see themselves not, or people can join the team names here. Okay, so I'm just going to create team 1, and if you want to give a name, just give a name in a bracket to the team. So all right, so that's team 1. I'll just give you an example, another example. Let's create team number 6, right? Team number 6 is what's you guys' name? Cyberhawk, if you want to pick a name. And then that's Danny. I don't know if that's the right Danny, Bailey. Okay, I don't know Bailey's Discord. I know Andrew. So your team 6, okay? All right, guys. So I want to make sure you guys do this, and this is sort of how your teams are. So people who are not on the call right now and people who are listening this in recording, I expect you guys to do this. If you add yourself to any teams, please take their permission before adding yourself to the team. If you are not on a team, then feel free to take team 8, 9, 10, and so on and so forth. So right now we have 7 teams, and please add yourself to the spreadsheet. And then once you add yourself, then create your own team thread in the channel, okay? Sweet. Okay, guys. All right. Okay, any questions? Does that seem? And then I think the first thing you guys want to do is, review review the case study. These are suggested steps, I would say. You can do work division by the type of evidence collection or the tool analysis you're going to do. And then, combine all your work together. Sometimes it takes a bit to kind of like, figure things out. So, if you don't have to do work division right away, everyone can kind of look at it and then come back in a couple days and then say, hey, I'm going to do this. That's fine too. So figure out what works for your team in that sense. But what I'm expecting from you guys is a report. And here is a template for report. If you have a better template, please use it. That's not required that you use that template, but use that and then submit that as for the case study. For the tool, I would recommend the way you kind of go about doing that is for the tool topic, maybe you kind of talk within your group. And if you are sort of doing some division of labor, not everyone has to do, everything. So you can maybe say, hey, 1 or 2 people can like go ahead and research a tool a lot more. And then pick a tool which is not part of the class, or like if there is, then don't repeat the stuff which is in the class. So the next thing in the tool forensics I would suggest is pick a tool. And then here is the presentation. I'm expecting as a submission for this, you will submit the PowerPoint of the tool. For teams, what I want you guys to do is, because this will show up as individual assignment in your Canvas, just submit the same thing for the team. So if you are, for example, part of, let's say, team 1, then all of you guys submit the same foreign case study in your Canvas, and then all of you guys submit the same tool research assignment. It's okay that it's getting repeated as individual assignments in each one of them. So that's fine. And then you will be doing live presentations in the final class. You will get 10 to 15 minutes to present your case study as well as tool. So, keep, and that has 100 points. So keep that in mind. Okay. Sweet. So any questions so far on the finals? I think we're doing good here. We're further along.
Can I come back to you about a question? Because I'm not sure yet. I need to get a closer look at the breakdown for the assignments. You kind of explained it already when you said that multiple people could get together. Because I noticed that there was like 5 points or 5 parts to the template breakdown. It's a mean. And so I was like, if there's 4 people in the group, then each person could do one thing. But just in terms of, just want to make sure everything was covered so nobody was doing more than they should, so it's a fair balance.
It's the team dynamics is you guys' responsibility. That's why you're working in a team. It's just work it out within the team. There is no requirements as such. Okay. And that's usually comes in real life as well, right? Like if you are on a team, you're working together, and it doesn't work well if your boss is trying to figure out like individual responsibilities. So, yeah. Sweet, awesome, guys. Any other questions? Cool. How are you guys feeling about the final project here? Good.
Nervous.
Yeah, very
Getting there.
nervous though.
It's a good exercise, you know, give it your best shot. It's a real case study with data. It's kind of rare. We are lucky we have all the data and the assignment, so it's kind of rare to kind of do it that way. So yeah, I mean, you know, otherwise you'll just be, you know, learning something theoretical. So, you know, imagine you are part of a forensic lab and you're doing this, right? And so this is what you would be doing. And you know, there is no right or wrong answer. So, you know, there is no right forensic analysis, as well as, you know, Sherman was saying, there is good forensic analysis and there is bad. What I just want, and there is, you know, you can always find more and more things, but, you know, don't do like a classic mistake where, you know, you are, where you kind of let a criminal go because you didn't do your job, right? So, or you did your job in a non-professional way that everything was thrown out. So one thing I would like you guys to also think of it is, you know, this will be make it fun. Like, you know, in the final presentations, kind of think of like, you know, we would be simulating a little bit of a mini courtroom, like, you know, as how Sherman was saying. So I will give an opportunity for every team to cross question other team. Okay. And both of you guys will be kind of graded some points on how good the cross question is and then how good your answer was. So kind of, you know, keep that in mind. We'll have a little bit of, you know, blue team, red team dynamics in the presentations. So kind of be prepared for something like that. All right. Yeah, it is a fair bit of work, but you know, whatever you are learning, this kind of capstone project will help you kind of, you know, solidify that. Okay. Sweet. Cool. It is, yeah, so plan about 10 to 15 hours, okay, in next 2 weeks for this. And that's why, like, if you're catching up with like reading and labs, you really want to make a lot of time for this course in next couple weeks. And that's other reason why I was insisting for you guys to finish your work earlier in the class as well. So that way you don't have more stuff added to your file. Cool. Sweet. So, all right. Any other questions on that? Yeah. Awesome. All right. Let's look through the modules. I know, like last time we sort of talked about, like with Julie, a couple things. So what I'm gonna quickly do is cover the Windows forensics part, and I'm gonna just you know, give you a bit of review of the last time what we talked about, and this was primarily around file systems, and Julie sort of covered some parts of it, but this sort of presentations covers a little bit about, you know, deleted data, hibernation files, and registry. So on a Windows system, unlike a Linux system, a lot of system information is stored in this mechanism called the registry. So the way you want to think of the registry is like it's sort of like a dictionary which has values for some keys. And these keys are how your Windows system works. So that's what a registry is, and it is very critical to functioning of the operating system. Deleted files are handled a little bit differently on every operating systems. So the tools which you learned in your lab, the one which you want to like kind of think a little bit more about is like FTK. So if someone on a Linux machine went and deleted a file, the file's gone, but the file doesn't like really get deleted from the disk. What really just happens is the file entry gets deleted, but the data is still there on the disk. Only if the system really needs it, it is going to go and reclaim that space. So very many times in crime situation, what happens is the criminal sort of looks at wants to get rid of a photo or wants to get rid of a file because they think it is something which is gonna be risky for them, so they just delete it. And then the crime happens, and then the device gets gets forensics analyzed. In that case, the data is still on the disk, and so the way you are going to get that data or that photo or that doc file is by doing this thing called as file carving. So what does file carving really do? And so I think there is a lab on it. So what file carving really does is you sort of go in your disk blocks and you look for or look for the start of the file and the end of the file, and you basically read out that information. There is no entry in the file system, but the data is there, and by knowing the first byte and the last byte, you are able to reconstruct the file. So this is sort of the mechanism called as file carving. The hibernation file is very typical to Windows. What it sort of does is it copies the RAM. So, and this is the tool which in this week's lab you will be looking at this thing called Velociraptor and other things, where what you're looking at is there is also data stored in the memory of the disk. So memory, I mean, is not like not your long-term storage memory, but your volatile memory. So volatile memory is your RAM. It's not like, but sometimes, if you just close your computer and open it up, it kind of starts doing what it was doing before. So why is that possible? Because, the device sort of keeps that information in memory, and in Windows, this memory information gets copied to a temporary file called as hiberfill.sys. It's called the hibernate file, but basically it allows it to kind of restore its temporary memory, which is RAM. So the way it sort of happens is by actually saving something. So imagine a scenario where someone committed a crime and they actually didn't store anything, but they just were looking at something, and they assumed that temporary photo which they had edited or temporary message which they had written, and it was not going to be saved. But what really happens is if you go to this hiberfill.sys file, you can actually read everything in the memory back again, right? And so if there is any temporary information stored, they can access it. So the temporary information could also be passwords. It could also be photos, anything which you were doing while the machine was closed, or it sort of went into a sleep mode, right? So it is still around. So that's the idea of looking at these elements of volatile memory. So keep that in mind. So there is a tool for that, and we'll talk about that. So there's there are power configurations. Hibernation is one of them. It is in Macs, Windows, Linux, all mobile devices, on your phones as well. So there is a lot of information which stays in the memory. I talked a little bit about registry. Registry is not in the book, but it is in the quiz. Ignore the message about final exam. We don't have a final exam. But registry sort of looks like this on Windows. It sort of is this, it has this thing which is divided as current user, local machine, users, current config. And it has values like, what's for example, if in Windows you set up like, my favorite or my default browser is like, say, Firefox, right? So where does that information get stored? So that information gets stored in this registry. Because next time you're trying to open a web page, then the system goes and looks at registry and says, hey, what browser am I using? And then the system says, oh, use Firefox. And that information is stored in registry. There is a lot of high risk information stored in the registry. It basically defines your system. So it's a very important source of information on Windows system. So I won't go into subkeys, values, but and hives. There are tools to read Windows registry. If you go on a Windows system and you type regedit, that's the tool you want to look at. So this is one important information. So it will also tell you, what USB devices were connected last. It will also tell you, what programs are on the system, things like that. So keep that in mind. You can get the registry information with FTK Imager or regedit. So this is what you probably have done in the lab, where you kind of like go through the imager and see system files, right? Cool. Sweet. So important time registry data is like time zone is one of the important one, and USB store, so you can kind of figure out what was connected to the machine. Yeah, so these are kind of look at these. These are very specific to Windows, but Windows is a very popular system. So and this is very, very crucial in terms of like what you can get from a forensic device. And so registry is like one of the important things. It's also one of the important things in terms of it getting corrupted, or it getting like touched. So like how Sherman was saying, the moment you open a Windows system, a bunch of writes happen. So if you are on a crime scene, don't, like, if the computer is turned off, just have it turned off, don't turn it off, right? Because it's going to then invalidate the registry or invalidate a bunch of files, right? Because it goes and updates a whole bunch of timestamps. So other tool is RegRipper, which is it's sort of like an export of registry. So these are a couple of tools you want to think of, but really kind of keep that in mind as you sort of go through. So what today we'll cover a bit is around Linux, network, and memory. And we'll talk about the chapters a bit. So this is very much, so the tools here which we are kind of covering are very much like you will need for doing your final project, for example, right? So network forensics, what does that mean? What happened on the network? So in the final project, what one of the things the system admin did was he went and captured some network logs, right? And so it's very much like the case, like, if something happens, like, you also get a trace of network. What does a trace of network really mean, right? It means like, what packets were flowing on the network, what devices were talking on the network in a certain time span, right? And so it is usually captured in your, router. It can also be triggered from one entity on the network. If it is a cloud system, then a lot of cloud vendors also capture network traffic. So there is a multiple ways to get network data. But end of day, what you're really getting is a packet capture of the network. It is very challenging because the data is huge. It's hard to parse. it's also like limited by time. And by network, you mean, you can also get, network locks from a carrier. Like, you can kind of, in case of like, some of the cases we talked about in Sherman's conversation, like they're trying to figure out whether, the network locks from the cell phone towers tell whether a particular device was connected to it or not. So that's also a network information. It's also a PCAP, right? So, there is the kill chain aspect of it, but let me kind of, how you kind of look at how do you access the wire, right? You will basically access it through the router. And what you really do is, in this case, is like a packet capture. There is this good YouTube video which talks a bit about, packet captures. So there we go. So, how many of you guys have used Wireshark before? Have you ever taken a class where Wireshark was introduced to you, or has anyone not heard of Wireshark?
I've installed on my computer.
NCL.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So I'm assuming pretty much everyone has heard of Wireshark. If you've not heard of Wireshark, I encourage you guys to install Wireshark. One of your labs is on Wireshark. So what you would be doing with Wireshark, and this is sort of what you would be doing on your final project as well, you'll open up the PCAP. What PCAP is basically a packet capture file, right? And so you can open that in a tool called Wireshark. So what Wireshark basically is that it sort of helps you, look through the packets in that file. It can also help you do a live packet capture on the network as well to see, what packets are flowing on my network. But basically it is sort of like a forensic tool, as well as it's sort of a debugging tool. You can see what packets were sent by a source to a destination, and then all these IP addresses mean something, right? If it starts with 192, that basically means it's a local network. That means the device is sitting in the local zone, which could be a house, office, whatever, but it is in that physical location. Other IP addresses which don't start with 192 or .10 are addresses on the internet. They belong to someone else, right? And just from the IP address, sometimes you can figure out a lot about the machine, who it belongs to, what network it lives in, so on and so forth. So these identifiers are very useful. And then the data being sent with them tells a story. So in this particular one, you will sort of see that, the protocol being used is TCP. There is one protocol called DNS, which is kind of looking up like what IP address for some particular name is, right? So these type of protocols tell a story. So all this information sort of tells a story of what really happened on the network. So you want to kind of use this tool to understand and tell that story, right? So Wireshark is really useful. And so a lot of times you can actually sometimes, like, the network, like, you go into a crime scene or a forensic scene and you're not able to access a device because there is a password. But if there was a network capture or there was a PCAP from the router you pulled out, sometimes you are able to figure out the password of, like, let's say an encrypted disk or an encrypted network device, which has a lot of information on, by looking at that network trace and seeing, oh, this is the password for this this particular network share. So that information is very useful for like just hacking into or like accessing storage, A lot of times it's also useful to see, oh, if you see like, a device which was on there for a little bit, so maybe there was someone in the local Wi-Fi range at that particular time, and so you can see their device ID or in a packet capture as well. So it tells the story of the crime scene. It helps you break into storage devices if there is passwords and things like that. So that's why packet captures are very, very useful. There's this tool called as Argus, which will help you kind of do TCP capture. There's a number of tools, but the most important and useful tool I would say is look at Wireshark. Okay. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot. Let's talk about a little bit about Snort, Bro, and things like that. So Snort is like an intrusion detection system, and it does some captures. And especially if you're looking at like a local network, if you're looking at a company, very many times the routers in the companies have Snort installed on them. So you can kind of look at the information there. Have any of you guys taken the intrusion detection class?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay, so you will learn a lot about Snort there, but this is just sort of like an introduction of like, this is also one source of, if you have a router and if it does have some Snort information from there, it will tell a lot of information about the traffic on the network. So keep that tool in mind, and it's pretty ubiquitous. And so all of these tools give you this information, but how do you analyze it? And so there are several tools to do that. The one useful and easy to use tool is Splunk. It just sort of takes a whole bunch of logs and helps you correlate them. And so these packet captures are nothing but like kind of like a log of network packets. So you can kind of look at that. It's it is, you have to sign up for it. There is sort of like, there is a free version of it, but it's cloud hosted. On your machine, you can install things like TCP stat is one of them. So these tools sort of give you an idea of what's happening on the network. So if you kind of learned one thing from this kind of conversation, learn that like, once you have a packet capture or you're able to get a packet capture, then look at it in Wireshark and try to create a story of the crime scene from what you see there. And so a lot of times like these identifiers might feel foreign to you, but if you try to trace it, oh, this is the type of protocol, this is what it really did, you will sort of kind of be like, finding a pattern. You might find traces of information, you might find a password, you might find like someone who was not supposed to be in the room was in the room, things like that. So these tools are very useful for that. Keep that in mind. Awesome. All right, so that's sort of network forensics, and two tools to kind of keep that there in mind is Wireshark and Snort. And so let's talk a little bit about memory forensics, and this is the part we touched on briefly with Velociraptor. So there is different types of memories. So at the very base level, the CPU has memory in terms of register. It's very expensive. It's very small. Typically a modern CPU, one core has about 15 registers, at the most 32. And one register captures maybe 64 bytes at the most in a 64-byte system, 32 bytes in a 32-byte system, right? So that's what a CPU works with. Under the CPU, there are usually two types of storages called caches, level 1 and level 2. those also have very, very small storage. They sit very close to the CPU, and then important information is stored in these caches. Typically, a lot of tables or data structures which are used by operating systems are stored in there, so that your system kind of works faster. And then the next faster memory available to your system is called RAM. And so all of these are temporary storage. They are not permanent memories. They are not like memory in sense of memory. They are temporary. So RAM is typically kind of what you are very familiar with when you go and buy your computer. You typically are like, oh, is this a 8 gig RAM or a 16 gig RAM, that sort of stuff. So RAM kind of gives that working memory to programs, and they can kind of work from a faster memory. But in terms of longevity, this is not stored forever. If you power off your computer, the stuff in the RAM disappears. Okay, but remember, if you hibernate or if you just temporarily sleep your device, this information in RAM is still around. And like as we kind of learned in Windows case, that information sits in a temporary file. So you can actually get information from hibernated or asleep devices, and it works very much similar on your phones as well. This is pretty much the same structure on your phone as well. Unless your phone is powered off, there is still temporary information in the RAM. So if you took a photo but it's not saved, or if you deleted a photo and you permanently deleted it, but there still might be a copy in the RAM of the phone. Okay. So the permanent type of storage, most common nowadays is our solid state devices. Back in the day, and still in a lot of data centers and corporate systems, there is hard disk. So hard disks are these magnetic devices, and they typically have a lot of storage. And then before that, there were like floppy disks and tapes, and tapes are still around. So tapes are long-term storage devices used in data centers and such. So those are permanent storage devices. And so when you kind of plug external storage, like an external hard drive or a USB or, or even a camera or a microphone, a lot of these devices have their own storage as well, but that's external to the system. And the way it's accessed by the system is through usually like, a storage standard like FireWire or USB, USB-C or USB, one of the storage standards. But the real storage of that information sits outside. Okay. So how do you get information from these tools? So all of these different types of memories have their own tools to get memory dump. So your memory dumps. So volatility. I'm sorry. Yeah, I meant volatility is like it is a tool which helps do memory dump from RAM, and it's very, very useful in cases of crimes. And volatility also would work on like, Android or things like that, right? So volatility will give you RAM information, right? A process dumper will also give you working memory of a process. So these are tools. Whereas DD, which is disk dump tool, kind of gives like a whole image on the hard disk. And hard disk, not just magnetic, but it also could be, solid state device, like like a flash device. So DD is tool on Linux. FTK Imager is a tool which under the hood would use something like DD. So these tools help you get the permanent memory out. But DD or FTK Imager won't necessarily dump the temporary storage from RAM or something like that. For that, you have to use volatility. So when you kind of in your final look at the live response, volatility might be a good tool to look at what was going on at the machine at the time, right? So that's sort of like the live dump of the machine. There is number of other tools, but the more important ones you want to remember is volatility, DD, and FTK imager. So one thing to kind of remember in a technical sense, can someone tell me what's the difference between physical memory and virtual memory? Has anyone come across the term called virtual memory?
Physical memory is hardware, like the RAM itself, the chips, the sticks, memory sticks. But the virtual memory is basically the swap space, which is software. You can assign a lot of virtual memory, even though the physical memory is not that much.
Right. Anyone else? So, the way you want to think of this is following. So on all modern systems, if you are running a program, the program thinks it has access to the entire hard disk or entire storage. So be it your phone, be it your computer, be it your even Raspberry Pi. The program, if your computer has like, let's say 256 gigabytes of storage, the program thinks it has access to 256 gigabytes, right? And the operating system, the way operating system makes that actually available, or if let's say your storage is 256 gigabyte, your RAM is 8 gigabyte. So the program always thinks your RAM is 8 gigabyte and your storage is 256 gigabyte. But the way the operating system makes that work is through this mechanism called as virtual memory. Because you might have, 5 programs running, and each one of them thinks I have 8 gig of RAM and 256 gig of hard disk. But if all 5 of them think, then, what if like they all like wrote like 8 gig of RAM and 256, like how is that going to work? So the way the operating system sort of does is by like having all these processes, virtually think that they have that much memory, because they in practice a lot of times they don't really need that much memory. And the way the operating system does that is, the way it will give you 8 gig of RAM is it's going to say, oh, you have 8 gig of RAM, and if you start writing 8 gig, and then what it's going to start doing is it's going to swap out some of the pages from the second process and the third process and the fourth process, right? And it's going to save it on the disk, or in storage. And so that is the mechanism by which it makes every program feel like, they have the whole memory. But in practice, it doesn't really do that. It kind of does this under the hood process of swapping out. What does that mean for forensics? That means like, in the memory information for like other 3 processes, which on that machine is being written on the disk somewhere. And if you have access to those, page swap files, you can actually read what was in the memory of that program at that time. So, you guys have, I think in the last class or earlier classes, you probably have talked about this tool called Mimikatz. Have any of you guys heard of the tool called Mimikatz?
Yes.
It's a hacking tool which kind of gets a password dump of like Windows passwords, and the way it does is by using these RAM swap files, and it kind of looks at the passwords stored in memory, and then it uses those passwords to kind of attack systems, right? And so that's what Mimikatz does. Okay. I'm not going to go into FireWire as it's sort of getting phased out. You can also get information from cache dump. So these are special files you will find on systems. So a lot of like gold mine of information is in like, these special files, like, swap files, temp files, crash files, because, those files store like information in a previous state. And so you can kind of find a lot of like, lot of evidence leads from these files. And so there are tools to actually work with it. And FTK Imager is like one of them. Sweet. Cool. How do you analyze memory evidence? You can use, Microsoft debugging tools. You can use, for memory, and I think there is a lab on volatility. You can use things like volatility, and the memory tools are very, very useful because you find like key things like, passwords and secrets and stuff like that is stored in memory in clear a lot of times. And you find that with things like volatility. Mandiant has a tool called Memorize as well. So there is a number of tools which help you do that, but conceptually you want to remember what information is stored and why that information is useful. Because as you sort of start telling a story or constructing a story, that's where you kind of are like, oh, maybe I want to use that tool to see if X was done, right? Maybe I want to do a memory dump to see if there was a password to that, that crypto crypto fob this person had, and it might be in the memory, right? Or there might be a deleted file which is a photo, like So there is look at some of the sample memory images for volatility if you're planning to use it for the final project. There is a link for that. So keep that in mind. Sweet. Awesome. So I think that was what we covered for these two classes. What I'm going to do is, I know we have 20 minutes remaining. What we're going to do is, for this particular class, the next set of reading exercises, and today's reading exercises, we will cover that. So for this class, NetLab 5 and 6 will give you a good idea of using like volatility or any of the tools like, Wireshark or things I talked about. So please look at those. Let's maybe now jump back and talk a little bit about the content. Let me bring up Discord. I know like last week, so all right. So we will discuss the chapters. We will discuss I think in the last class we did okay, cool. So we will discuss 5 through okay, yeah, that's right. So we'll discuss maybe one group. If we have students in the class, we'll cover some of the information. Actually, we did discuss this last time, right? We did do discussion on report writing in last class, right? A class discussion. Yes.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, great.
On this chapter 5 to 8 for this week, I think.
Yes, awesome. So let's maybe do discussions for chapter 5 through 8, and then if you have any questions on 5 through 8 as well as today's class, we'll handle them. So we have about 15 minutes, so we'll do a 4 groups. Do we have Lashant? Yeah, Lashant, you're here. Andrew? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Okay, Reggie? We don't have Reggie. Can someone fill in for Reggie and do Linux and Mac file systems? Any volunteers? All right, Anthony, can I volunteer you for being the lead on 7?
I looked it over for the most part, but reading over it, I kind of looked at it and I was like, I'm not confused, but it was just kind of out there for me.
All right. How about Christina? You wanna?
I had sort of the same reaction to it. I did chapter 1 a couple weeks back, so.
All right, okay. Let me see. Anyone else? Maybe Craig?
Sure, I can do it.
Okay, awesome, Craig. All right, okay. And then Rob, you're here with us, right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So we will break into 4 groups and talk about these 4 chapters. And then we'll come back in 10 minutes. And if you guys have any questions, we will talk about those. So let me open up the breakout rooms and do this. So we can do 4 groups. All right. And I'll move people around. So let me see. First, all right, I'm gonna open up and then move people around. I think, yeah. And then Andrew, you. Okay. Awesome. And then Rob. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna open up the rooms. We will be discussing room 1 with chapter 5, room 2, chapter 6. Fine. So I just
But I did.
All right, guys, welcome back. Welcome back. I know we're gonna get right at the time here. So maybe we'll go a couple minutes over, but not too long. We will go around and talk about the groups. But I just want to
Yeah, I didn't mean.
go ahead.
When I did,
So I just want to remind, like, next week, we are going to we have chapter 9 and 10 only, but we will discuss some of these chapters which you guys want to discuss next week as well. So next week, I think Nella and Abdeslam are the reading leads for the chapters. So please remember that. Okay. All right. So with that, let's go around group 1 through 4 and see what you guys thought of the chapters. Who's summarizing from group 1? I think there was a chat here.
I'll make it quick, Professor. Pretty much I let them know that it was about storing data, and I brought up how at my current job this was important because a lot of the data that I collect, if it gets out, it's a HIPAA violation. So even though this particular chapter was about investigation and more forensics, it still aligns because when I'm doing work like on my home computer, I have to be mindful that I have information regarding people's substance abuse and their mental health, and that information cannot go out. So it is important on how you protect that data.
Now, true. So chapter 5, and you reviewed, like, it's an interesting chapter. Some of this we talked about today in the class as well. So like whole disk encryption is one of those things you have to remember. Like now a lot of devices, and especially Windows devices, come with what's called BitLocker. And so the whole disk is encrypted. So unless you have the key for the disk, it's very hard to make any sense of the data. So keep that in mind. But yeah, no, thank you so much for summarizing that. Cool. Is Andrew back? Or for chapter 6, anyone wants to chime in? I know you guys started a little bit late, or you didn't have Andrew.
Yes, we didn't have Andrew. I was just going through his notes, and it was basically talking about the current digital forensic tools. He had mentioned the various type of forensic tools, from hardware to software forensic tools, and things you should consider when forensic tools. He talked about, is the tool going to run on? Is the tool versatile? Can it analyze more than one system, such as FAT, NTFS, and E4 talks about whether the tool has a feature that can help reduce the time needed. So basically, it also delved into the functions required for these tools, which are primarily acquisition, validation, verification, extraction, reconstruction, and reporting. And he talks about the work that some of these tools can run in a command line interface, and it's some designed to run in minimal configuration and can fit on a bootable disk. So that was just a primary summary. I had very little time to catch up, but it was just insightful as to the functions of these digital forensic tools, how you compare them, the considerations to have, and an overall summary of the kind of tools you should choose based on your needs.
No, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah. So one thing I would add is like, in some of these tools, there is like a function called as write blocker. And so, if you turn that on, then, no matter like, even if the software tries to write something to the disk, it won't be able to. So sometimes it's also like a switch you will see at some hard disk have on the side. If you turn it on, then, it's not going to write to the disk. And that's really cool. So there is functionality like that you should be aware, so you basically don't corrupt the source data. Sweet. Awesome. So chapter 7, I think Craig from your group, we'll go a couple minutes over here.
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of talked generally about our experiences with the different file systems, and some of the things that we've tried. It's all pretty new to us. So we didn't have a great sense of, what the down and dirty differences are between, the Linux file system and a Windows file system, when it comes to forensics. But we talked a bit about how easy and powerful the tools are in Linux for creating users and defining how users are able to change files, like with the permissions settings, and talked a bit about, those basic file folders and whatnot that Linux has that you would want to look at if you were doing a forensic analysis, and how Macintosh, because it's basically running on a Unix platform, has a lot of those tools, but they're hidden under the hood. So they're there and accessible if you know how to look for them and are comfortable doing that. And then we talked a little bit about the Linux forensics tools, and just how, like, for example, Autopsy feels very different using it in Linux than it does in the Windows format that we've used it so far in the labs, which was sort of surprising, right? Because in the labs, it's a very, the GUI has a lot of information in it, whereas the GUI in the Linux version of Autopsy feels like it was designed in 1996. The graphics of it.
Right.
So even though it's doing, I think, a lot of the same things under the hood, it's a little more challenging if you're where we are, which is at the beginning of doing all of this.
Yeah. So other toolkit in Linux is SleuthKit, and so these are like, today, like Sherman mentioned, this Linux distribution called Kane. It has a lot of like updated version of some of these tools. Autopsy is still kind of used, but a lot of it is like for just automation and through scripts. So not as much from the UI. But that's another distribution you should look at if you want to like look at Linux, called Kane, CAINE. I'll post a link for it as well.
Yeah, we did use that, I think, for one of the labs that we did last week. We used Kane.
That's right. Sweet. Chapter 8. I think it was, that would be the last. Who's from the last group? Recovering files.
We didn't get a chance to pick some of them, so I could go ahead and
go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So we just I just went over the chapter summary that I posted on Discord. Basically, this chapter is talking about graphic files and just the different types: bitmap, vector, metafile graphics. And then we're discussing about raw versus compressed images. I'll just share a little bit, as because I'm a photographer, and so I shoot in raw files, and why that's important as a photographer, and how as an analyst it might be very useful. And then we were talking about the lossless versus lossy types of compression. And then from there, we just moved on, talking about the EXIF image and, just information, the metadata that's contained in those files. And then lastly, just because of time, I'll just jump to the last thing. We were just talking about the stenography and how, we use it in other labs and previous classes before, and how, yeah, that was pretty interesting. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Awesome. Thanks for the great summary. Yeah, with graphic files, you always want to remember, like, even if you get a part of the file, sometimes you can kind of reconstruct a fuzzy image because, a lot of ways these graphic files are stored, they're kind of progressively made, detailed. So even if you have a part of file, you can kind of create a fuzzy image with it as well. So keep that in mind. Awesome, guys. Sorry for going a bit over. We are gonna wrap up today's class. So the assignments are in your Canvas, I think, for next week. It is gonna be Quiz 4 and NetLabs 4. There are 2 labs. And then, it's gonna give you some time to prepare for your final case study. Next week, we'll cover internet and social media forensics. It's fairly, it is a vast topic, but we'll cover it fairly broadly. So more and more, I think you will be kind of now like spending more time on your final presentations, and then make sure you do the labs before you attempt the final presentation, because these labs help you get to the project work. If you have any questions, please message me Discord. I will be back at 1 o'clock for a few minutes to see if anyone has any questions lingering. Otherwise, I will see you guys next Friday. Yeah. Cool.
Sounds
All
good.
right,
Thank
guys.
you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Have
Have a great week.
Yeah, have a good
Thank you.
weekend. Talk to you guys. Carol, will reconvene at 1 for a little bit to see if any of the students have questions.
Yeah, I heard.
Okay, great. Awesome.